Assalamualaikum and good morning. Now you are back again in IT Hour. Okay, as usual with me in iRadio Konti is Encik Mohamed Dhiauddin bin Muhammad Suffian, a lecturer from Faculty Information Technology and Multimedia Communication. Okay, today Cik Muhammad Dhiauddin is going to share with us about a glance of open software. First of all, thank you so much, Cik Dhiauddin, for willing to come in iRadio Konti today.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, first of all, can you share with us what is open source software?
Okay, open source, as the name says, is actually a software that is released under Open Source Initiative or OSI certified license. But some people refer open source as a program or software which the source code is available to the public for modification and is free of charge. Typically, it's created collaboratively over the net, so they can simply improve the code and distribute within the community. So back to OSI definition, there are 10 characteristics to categorize the software as open source. First is a free distribution, so no license. Second, the source code, so it must be involved source code and allow for distribution. Third, derived works, meaning the license should allow for modification. 4, integrity of the author's source code, so meaning the license may restrict source code from being distributed in the form of patch files. And fifth, no discrimination against persons or groups. 6, no discrimination against fields of endeavor. 7, distribution of license. 8, license must not be specific to a product. 9, license must not restrict other software. And also, last but not least, license must be technology neutral, meaning it's not vendor centric. So from that 10, basically the important aspect is free distribution of the source code and the permission to allow the software to be modified by other party as long as it distributed under licensing condition like GNU public license or GPL, MIT license and so forth. So that's the essence of open source software.
Okay, is open source only a license or not?
Okay, the term open source itself actually means many things, has wide application. So for the OSI, they refer this open source as a distinctive software development methodology employed by many open source software projects. That's why when we go to OSI homepage, they will say that open source is a development method for software that harness the power of distributed peer review and transparency of process. But we also must be aware that the open source sometimes conflict with other principles of software development, usually taught in the universities and in academia, because open source software may or may not be developed using an open development methodology. So it's a choice of other development methodology, whether they want to use any kind of methodology, as long as when it's distributed is open source. So it's not just about license, but also the methodology of developing the open source.
Okay, Cik Dhiauddin, we will take a small break, and after this we are going to discuss more about open source. So stay tuned to our Radio OUM. For those who just log on to our website iRadio.oum.edu.my, now you are tuning to IT Hour with our topic today on a glance of open source software. Okay, stay with me in iRadio Konti is Encik Mohamed Dhiauddin, a lecturer from Faculty Information Technology and Multimedia Communication. Okay, Cik Dhiauddin, can you share with us, does open source mean anything else?
Okay, we need to know where does this open source term came from. So open source originally came from the world of journalism and intelligence, and usually they refer it as a publicly available source of information. So from that's where how OSI was founded. So during that time, when they say open source, it's actually referred to a feature, not a bug. And sometimes open source also conflict conflicting with a term open content or free content, but it's not the actual thing. Open content refers to content that can be edited, changed and added to by any reader. Simple example is Wikipedia. So that's the difference between open source and free content. So in terms of today's context, open source, as the term open source has been used beyond what has been originally founded. So but to stress to the learners out there, it's better for us to refer open source software as a software released under OSI certified license. That's the common understanding that we should have for those who are actually involving in the open source community.
If it not satisfied by OSI, so it's not open source software.
We can say that, but when we have a centralized understanding and commonality of open source software, so it's easy to say that this open source is certified, something like that.
Okay, after this we are going to take a look whether open source is the same as
free software.
Free software. So stay around on our Radio UM. Be informed, be inspired, be entertained. Only on our Radio UM. Roam across your mind. I'm Si Zainab, still keeping you company with our guest today, Encik Mohamed Dhiauddin, to share with us about topic today, a glance of open source software. Okay, just now you already shared with us a brief explanation what is open source. And now let's take a look whether free software is also the same as open source software.
Okay. We shouldn't be confused with this two terminology. Free software is free software, open source is open source. Free software is the term used by the Free Software Foundation. So as I said earlier, when we say freeware, it's actually a software that can be acquired at no cost, but the source codes may or may not be available. So this term has been has been used by free software to explain that free software must contain this characteristic. First, free software itself is actually a matter of the user's freedom to run, copy, distribute, study, change and improve the software. So for this, 4 things must be complied. First, the freedom to run the program for any purpose. Second, the freedom to study how the program works and change it so it does your computing as you wish. So meaning the access to the source code is a precondition for this. Number 3, the rule of a free software, the freedom to redistribute copies so you can help others to use it. And the final one, the rule is the freedom to distribute copies of your modified version to others. So by doing this, you can give the whole community a chance to benefit from your changes. So again, you must have access to the source code to do this. So from that 4 rules of free software, we can clearly see it's not exactly the same. Open source, we can have access to the source code, we can modify, we can distribute under different license. So that's it. But free software, it can be freely downloaded or used without being charged, but it does not necessarily you can have access to the source code. But for open source, yes, we can have access and modify it. So that's the difference.
A clear differences between open source and free software.
Yes, sometimes we refer as a freeware, right? So that's different.
Okay, after this, we are going to take a look on the type of open source software available. So stay tuned to our Radio UM.